Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 10:15 session. My name is Andrew Hill. I am the management editor of the Financial Times. That means that I neither edit nor manage. I write about management and how companies are run, and issues like the one we are going to debate today, which is the fascinating and always controversial, I hope, question of whether big companies can innovate as well as proudly small ones. I am also British. Lord Griffiths has set the bar very high for excuses about why I'm not in Britain voting. So I want to make clear two things before we start. One is I am not a member of the House of Lords. and the other one is that I placed my vote by post before coming here. But we do have voting here in the hall for this particular session and other sessions. And we are going to pose a question. I think we'll pose it at the beginning and then we will pose it again at the end to see whether things have changed. The vote should come up on the screen, but the question is, are big companies more likely to come up with groundbreaking innovations than small companies are? And it's a simple yes or no answer, and you should be able to vote by text, I think. That's the method, and we're going to see whether we get a change in that vote as the session progresses and at the end. Now, I'm joined by four people on stage who I think would all say that their companies are proudly big rather than proudly small. On my left, far left, Nick Hayek, president of the management board and board of directors, member of the board of directors at Swatch Group. Next to him, Ulrich Spiesshofer, chief executive of ABB. On my immediate right, Stephen Lee, the chairman of Singapore Airlines, and on the far right, Jörg Reinhardt, chairman of Novartis. So, as I say, all large companies. And the challenge for large companies is always maintaining agility and creativity as they grow. So I'm going to ask each member of the panel just initially to answer one question briefly. Imagine that we're all, I should say, obviously we're all, as the program rather unfairly points out, over 50 on this panel, but there are lots of innovative and creative 20, 30 and 40-somethings in the audience. So imagine I am an innovative 20-something candidate for a post at your companies. Convince me that your company is more innovative than the small startup that I am planning to join. Ulrich, would you like to start by convincing me?
Okay, thank you very much for that. Look, when you take ABB, a lot of people see from outside a very large company. But in truth, it's a federation of successful startup companies. Whether it's the invention of ABB in 1891 here by the Bavarian Bovary and the Englishman Brown, whether it's the invention and the startup business around our high voltage power transmission, whether it's 1974, the startup robotics business, whether it's in 2012, our e-mobility business, or this year, our small piece assembly activity. ABB is a federation of successful startups in a very wide context. You should join us because innovation is a part of our values. When we redefined the new strategy of ABB for the next 5 years, we set up 5 value pairs. And 2 of them are customer focus and quality, and the other one is innovation and speed. So it's deep ingrained in the DNA of the ABB today and the ABB in the future. We have also removed the hurdles that you typically have as a big company where people cannot be proudly small and not be proudly innovators. Because typically in a company like ABB, you get compensated when you run a big part of ABB, and you do something which is really working well. So we have changed the compensation system, we have changed the grading to really allow that a young person that has an exciting opportunity gets compensated for the risk and the opportunity that it takes. And last not least, startup in ABB means you have a simpler start and you have an easier up. The simpler start is you can work on a platform which is already there. You don't need to worry about the accounting system. You don't need to worry about the building. It's all there. We provide it to you. In terms of scaling up your business later on, we got a global reach where you can team up with others. So altogether, you should absolutely join as a young innovator because it's a great place to be.
Okay. Stephen Lee, Singapore, thank you. Yes, thank you. Stephen Lee, Airlines, it's innovation of a type that involves not the aircraft itself sufficiently so much as the system that the airline is running for the aircraft. So why should I join Singapore Airlines if
Indeed.
I'm...
So I'd like to make a pitch to you as well as all the young innovative ones out there that Singapore Airlines is the right company for you. If you wish to leverage on the benefit of a large company and also be able to innovate, because we are a large company in a small country. And the largeness accords you the benefit of scale, and actually the smallness of Singapore makes SIA feel the limits of growth very quickly. All right? Singapore is a small country of 700 plus kilometers, 2% of the land area of Switzerland, with no domestic flight, not even one, okay? All right, and a limited domestic market. I think this drives Singapore Airlines to continue to innovate, and I have to say that innovation is really the lifeline for Singapore Airlines. So that's my pitch.
Okay. I like how you played the small card there in the middle of the big.
I have to slip that in somewhere.
Yes. So Novartis, another company which is a large company in a small country. What's your? How are you going to convince me?
Well, first of all, I would probably say the same things my colleagues here have said before about innovation being in our values and our lifeblood and everything else. I believe in addition to that, in our business, many people who join the industry, being big or small, want to really make a contribution to improve people's lives. And an invention is not enough for that. So to turn an invention with all the effort that you need and with all the data and with all of the additional work that's needed, to turn an invention into an innovation that really helps people is a significant undertaking that can be done by big companies like us, but can in most cases not be done by small companies. So if you really want to make a contribution to improve people's lives, join us because we are able to do that.
Okay. We'll come back to that. And finally, Nick, obviously Swatch grew very strongly from the outset, from the initial innovation. Why should one join now when it's already big and bigger than some of the other companies on the panel?
Yeah, you're right. We have many people they want to join, but they see that we are promoting our own people. We have apprenticeship. We have more than 400 people. We push them, so it's difficult to come into the company from outside. But of course, we are hiring many people. But typically, if somebody comes and say, hey guys, startup or you, then I first want to know why would he go to a startup? Does he really want to make money as short term as possible, to launch the company into the stock market, lose control, and be under pressure and report every 3 months what they do? Or does he prefer to identify himself with one of the most emotional brands in different segments that are existing in the world? You can go from Swatch up to Breguet, to Harry Winston, to Omega. And in our company, you can do everything. From research and development to production, distribution, watchmaker schools, marketing. So you can do everything. And you can start as apprentice at Swatch, and you end up in a Harry Winston store in Singapore as boss. So that's his choice. If he wants to identify himself with an emotional brand that people desire, and he wants to know all the aspects, not only in research and development, but he controls the production on site, and also he will touch the end consumer, and he would feel what the innovation he has done brings to the consumer at the end, then he should do it. But if he's looking to get money at the stock market on the short term, he should do his startup. We would prefer not to have him.
So let's just, okay. So let's just lead off from that. To use a watchmaking metaphor, is the new candidate chooses to be part of Swatch, is she just going to be a small cog in a large machine?
No, you know, Swatch Group is it's like a small family company, if you want. Unfortunately, at the stock market, we cannot change this. People know our attitude. But we're not reporting on a 3-month level, only on a 6-month. So we have very flat hierarchies. We accept chaos because organization structures are very inhuman. Because you would not try to put organization structures in your private life. You try to get rid of them and be free and to operate in a free manner. So what we have are very flat hierarchies, and we delegate no centralization. We delegate the power to the countries and to the brands. If you look at an Omega man or an Omega women, they would look more like the gentleman here near me. If you look at a Swatch person, if you look at the Swatch person of the brand, they look more like me with jeans and no socks. You have Harry Winston, you have all these 18 brands we have. We leave the identity to these brands. And when you go to the countries, Swatch Group Singapore, we have in most of the countries our affiliates. We produce, of course, everything in Switzerland, but distribution and marketing. We build there a country management, but below that, every single brand has his boss, marketing, sales. We duplicate everything. All financial analysts have said, you're stupid. You should have one brand manager for all brands. You save money. I say, it's not possible. Every single brand has a different DNA, is an emotional brand, and that's how we operate.
So you're making the case for autonomy is one of the things that leads to
decentralization. Don't be centralized. We are a total decentralized company with flat hierarchies. Of course, we lose some efficiency.
Right.
But so what? At the end, long term, you win in the operation.
So you're also sort of implying that it's not really possible to innovate in a suit. So I'm going to give Ulrich
No. But wait. No. Now I must defend. No, I must defend. Do you think that Omega is one of the most innovative brands? What they do is fantastic. So it was a reference to these gentlemen. They are more clever than I am. No, I have an Omega also on the right hand.
Okay. So I'm going to give...
Split personality.
Notwithstanding that, I'm going to give Ulrich the opportunity to come back
fun.
here
Okay.
on the issue of specifically innovation within a large, well-established company. We've heard the case for actually, and it's a good one, I think, the shelter of the large, well-established company with the right tools inside does give innovators some freedom. So how does that work at ABB?
Well, I think we have pushed very, very hard the last couple of years to bring 3 things together that you really need to drive innovation and also feel like a little startup and entrepreneur. And that's accountability, responsibility, and authority. Because in large companies, very often you walk into meetings and say, so who is accountable? And then you ask who is responsible, and it goes this way. So we need to make sure that we form small entrepreneurial cells that have the authority to decide, that have the accountability, but also have the responsibility later on to live with the result and feel it in a positive and in a challenging way.
So that's point number 1. They feel proudly small within ABB?
And I think that's one of the key points that we are working on changing, because it's difficult to be proud in a big company about something small if you just look at the overall size of the company. But if you single out people that really make the delta in a company like ABB, all of our innovations have started small. If you look at our small parts assembly this afternoon, we have a team that shows our small new robot that does assembly. How did that start? A small group of people in China came up and said the 3C industries would be a great space to do something in robotics in. And we said, well, let's not do that from the corporate headquarters. Let's not do that from the R&D center in Sweden. We gave them a little bit of money to play with. We gave them some space, a platform to activate, and we gave them access to some of our customers that they could engage with. And in record time, we got it going. Another example is we're working together with others. Nick Hayek and myself started a project 10 months ago. And 10 months ago, we said we want to have a speaking motor. We want to have on our electrical motors a voice, a sensor that says, how do I feel and how do I get going? We used his microelectronics team. We used the ABB motor team. In a Hanover fair a month ago, we launched this new product, which is basically a sensor, a communications device, and a microprocessor. And we brought costs down to do this by more than 90%. So there is innovation power if you use it in the right way in these companies.
Right. So let me just switch to my right here, to Jörg and Novartis. The Prime Minister of Malta in the first session said that really big companies, most innovation in big companies, he said, comes from buying small companies. Now, Novartis is a company that's built by merger. It's obviously allied and bought small companies. Is he right?
No. But before I answer the question, I think, Mr. Hayek, not everybody is wearing a suit at Novartis, and people in your outfit could make a career there as well. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, that would be possible.
Because you can buy pills that are making disappear the look from outside.
Whatever problem you have, we can make it to go away. So when you look, and we do statistics on that in terms of how many of the products of the innovations that we sell is actually originated internally versus externally. And when you do that statistic, and it differs for the pharmaceutical industry, when you do it for us, it's around 30% of our innovative products on the market come from outside sources. 70% come from inside sources. So it may apply to parts of the industry that growth, especially innovation, comes from acquisitions, etc. It does not apply to Novartis. On the other hand, I have to say that Novartis, like Roche and others, is one of the few companies that puts enormous emphasis on internal research. We have an organization of 20,000 people in research and development, and it happens that you feel small as an individual with 20,000 others. On the other hand, I mean, people want to be recognized for what they do. People want not necessarily compensation and money. They want to be valued and they want to be recognized. And that happens in a big company as well as in a small company. There's not a big difference. People also have the infrastructure and the flexibility to interact with outside scientists on a very frequent basis. I mean, even big pharma is opening more and more and more. We have so many collaborations that I would say almost every lab at Novartis has some kind of an external collaboration with somebody in the outside world, be it academia or biotech. So there's plenty of flexibility in the system.
And has that changed? I mean, you worked with Novartis from 2000, is that right? Or as Chief Operating Officer?
1982.
Okay, so lifetime nearly in Novartis. Has that changed? Is it much more free now within Novartis for people to innovate and invent within that 20,000? Sounds like a huge structure to me and quite hard to manage.
I think lots of things have changed. I mean, when you look at how science developed over the last 10, 15 years, and that's not a long period of time. When you look back 15 years or so, there was still the dogma that you have to have a large internal infrastructure. You need libraries. You need internal access to all different technologies. In the meantime, all of those technologies are available outside as well. I mean, you are a small startup with 10 people, and you have access to all the technologies that you need to actually feel like a much bigger company. That has changed dramatically over the last 10, 15 years, which means for us that we need to open up much more than we did in the past and actually seek these collaborations in a much more active way, which we do. So for us, growth from an R&D perspective is likely to happen externally, not that much internally anymore.
So you have a nice video on your website about innovation, which says, the catchline is, it can happen if we never stop asking what if. So let me ask a what if question. What if Novartis was broken up into lots of small companies? Would they not be more innovative, more energetic than Novartis as a large company?
So two things. One, we did break up some of our parts, so we are a little bit smaller than we used to be 2 years ago. Second, when you again look at data that have been published on where does the innovation come from, is it big or small companies that drive it? There is no evidence that in a small company innovation would be more successful than in big companies. Actually, there are plenty of documentation that suggests otherwise in terms of, again, availability of peers to share, of challenge, scientific reviews that actually encourage you to do better, that you have in a large company on an ongoing basis. You don't have it in a small company where you're pretty much focused on yourself and your own perspective. So this notion of big cannot innovate and has actually to buy smaller companies in order to be able to do so is just wrong.
So let me move to Stephen with a sort of following on from that a little bit. There's obviously, there is a sense that innovation, I think we would probably all agree that innovation of some sort can happen in big companies. But the question that the audience has been asked, and which they're responding a resounding no at the moment, is that big companies are much less likely to come up with groundbreaking innovations. So at Singapore Airlines, obviously one can incrementally innovate the in-flight experience and the look of the cabin and those sorts of things. I interviewed a startup a few years ago, and he said, that's fine, it's a 3 to 5% optimization of what the company already does. That's the kind of innovation that big companies do, whereas startups do something totally different. How possible is it to do a groundbreaking breakthrough innovation at Singapore Airlines?
Well, I'm looking at the answer now. It's 2 to 1, okay? So I think I would agree with the direction. For large companies, the frictional forces between the different department divisions, because there's order, because there's governance, tend to lessen the freedom to move, which a smaller company can enjoy. So in Singapore Airlines, we are in the airline industry. It's a highly regulated industry. And we looked at it this way. How can we drive ourselves to continue to innovate? We have a product innovation department which looks at opportunities to innovate, which evaluate projects. And these are the big pieces. And they are the evaluation of questions like whether or not we should invest in the A380 and the new generation of aircraft, which long gestation. Okay? And there are a lot of calculations to be made. But at the same time, on the customer-facing end, we want to decentralize. Because most of the good ideas of improving customer service have come from our own service people. So we give them the authority and we give them a right platform to try out new things. Maybe not throughout the whole system, but on selected routes. So they can try something out. Some of them may work, some of them may not work. So whereas we have a more structured, corporate-driven process, for the big pieces, the service side is decentralized. I must also add that we recognize we have certain limitations. And therefore, we don't do everything in-house. We also leverage on innovative, smaller companies outside for our own needs. Right. For instance, some of the design of our top-end 380 suites have actually come from specialists. We went to designers for yachts. The designers for yachts are very good in saving every centimeter. So they are very economical on scale, and they do this as a profession. So we collaborate with them to come up with products. So we recognize and we leverage on outside expertise.
Right. I'm going to come to the audience in a second, but I just want to go back to Nick, because I know that in terms of changing the rules, this was in the FT, so it must be true. We wrote that on the wall outside your office, you have a pirate's flag, and you said to us, it means never accept the rules, challenge them. So how do you keep order?
No, You know, it comes down to something my father always said. Keep the fantasy of your childhood when you are 6 years old or 7 years old. You go and ask. You're not spoiled by saying, oh my God, don't ask this. People would think you don't know it. You just ask when you don't know. And you have not the status to lose. And to have this pirate's flag out there is really symbolizing that there are so many rules and we get more and more. I mean, it's totally, we want to standardize everything. You see, I cannot smoke cigars here on the podium. It's a disaster. But I would not. Even if I would be allowed, I would not. So we have to tell the people, hey, come on, let's challenge the rules, not just accept everything like a child. You cannot say to your child, come on, shut up when he asks something. Or you don't understand. You have to respond. And if you don't know it, you have to say you don't know it. And this is opening the mind. And that's important. And it's, you know, I'm not a pirate killing people. It's just to remind the people, hey, guys, we have to keep this fantasy of your childhood.
Right.
And let me say something about big companies or not big companies. I'm agreeing with Mr. Reinhardt. It depends what you do. Look, if you are a person, a sports person, you're big. If you want to make a career in sumo fighting, that's fantastic. You must. If you want to make a career in jockey races on horses, it's a disaster. You should be light and small. So it's always depending what you want, in what market are you. And then the innovation. Do innovation is one thing, but you see, I see many, many things that are innovative. But at the end, if they don't become a product, if they are not changing habits, creating new wealth, and are really touching the consumer or the client, if it's not directly a consumer product, what are you doing with the innovation? It's just to make fantasies at the stock market. We saw this with the internet bubble many years ago. You were too young.
I wrote about it.
And then, so the question is also, innovation is good, but how quick you come from an innovative idea to the finished product? And here you need experience. And here a big company that puts the means can make it much quicker.
Right,
and give you time.
That's a clear rule.
If a company is run by entrepreneurs, and here they are, despite the suit that they have, here they are, they will have, and they will take the time to make it happen, because at long term it's important for the company.
Right. Ulrich, you were nodding just briefly about the rule-breaking part of it. How do you, I mean, ABB is more like the Navy than the pirates, isn't it?
Yeah, well I think there's an image that I always have, and I even told my executives, is you have to take the hamster out of the wheel. Because when the bigger the company is, the more people might become a hamster that runs as fast as possible in the wheel as it knows. And now and then, you really have to take the hamster out of the wheel. I got a lot of hamsters with legs like that, really strong, really running the wheel very fast. And sometimes you need to take it out. You need to bring young people in, which are not yet in that wheel. You need to create new wheels where people are running in. And I think this is one of our jobs in the roles that we have as CEOs of companies.
Right. Okay, so on that hamster metaphor, we'll go to the audience. Get the lights up a little bit. I'm hoping for questions particularly from people who are running startups or hoping to be in startups. So we'll start with the lady in the front here. I'm going to take them individually to start with, and then we'll come back to others. Could you say who you are and what your affiliation is?
Susie Levine, and I'm the U.S. ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein. So I come from a country where there's some innovation going on, and it's a big country in which there's that innovation going on. And one of the characteristics that I frequently hear cited to attribute the innovation that's happening is a freedom to fail and a freedom to fund failure and to learn from that failure. As big companies, I would like to understand two things. One is, what is it that you are doing to facilitate and enable failure and learning from that failure? And then similarly, what are you doing to enable disruptive innovation that might threaten your cash cows?
Okay, good questions. Jörg, would you like to start with the failure point, and we'll come to the disruption?
I would have liked it the other way around, actually.
No,
it's okay.
I'm giving you failure to start with.
It's okay. It's actually a good point. And I mean, again, there has been research done looking at why are some things successful and others are not, and what distinguishes successful organizations from non-successful. And in our field, in pharmaceutical industry, one of the most decisive factors is stopping unsuccessful projects early. Because there's a huge opportunity cost if you keep on going with stuff that in principle will never work, will never turn out to be a product for the consumer or the customer. But there are always some open questions that you could still consider to solve. So people keep on going, keep on investigating. Of course, there's lots of hard blood of individuals with the project, so they keep on going. Decision-making is difficult. People don't dare to actually cut the project. So at the end of the day, there is no failure for a long period of time, but there's opportunity cost because you keep on investing in something that will never make it. So those companies that have ways to actually identify failure early, stop projects early and move on to stuff that's more successful, are more successful than others. Now, that needs courage of management, needs also knowledge of management to be able to challenge and actually get people to agree that the data is not robust enough to continue. So we encourage our people to have early reviews, scientifically driven reviews, to really look at the merit of an approach and have an objective judgment, also with external counsel, as to does it make sense to go on or not. And it's no problem if the project fails, but it should fail early. Because if it fails late, it's a few $100 million later. And actually, this is company money that could have been invested somewhere else. So failing early is okay, failing late is not.
Okay, and briefly on disruption? How do you get the disruption going? Yeah,
me?
Just briefly.
In our industry, I mean, we have a patent law that actually protects the business principle that we have. So we have 10 to 15 years of a product life, and then the product is dead. Because generics come in, the sales fall within 6 months, and our product is over. So if we don't continue to innovate on an ongoing basis and replace this product with something else, we are dead anyway. So this means that we need to, even if we have a new product coming on the market today, we need to already think of the next generation. And something that is significantly better in order for people to recognize the innovation and are willing to pay for it. So we are on a constant need to renew our product approaches anyway. So making old products obsolete is actually what we ought to do on an ongoing basis.
Right. Stephen, how do you encourage failure? I don't want too many failures in the air, thank you very much. But
big versus small, or a innovative culture in a company versus a not so innovative culture. So I think we have to balance that. My quick answer to that is provide an accessible platform to try out new ideas. So you have affordable failures, okay, before you roll out. And in that process, you should support that process with a structure that, if it's successful, it's scalable. And I think continuous engagement, recognition of where the ideas come from, and incentivization, these are all tools that we can use. On disruption, air transport basically is in the business of moving people from A to B, or moving goods and back. So as long as people desire to travel, it's there. But there are a lot of disruptive, I think, tools that we can use to overcome competition, in that we can do something better, and the leveraging on IT. One area that we always question ourselves is SIA reaching our customer of the future? Okay? Because we tend to use the platform that we know. But today, with the web-based, there are a lot of disruptive areas, and we question ourselves, are we aware and are we using the right tools to reach the customer of the future rather than the platforms that we are so used to?
Okay, another question. Let's see. Gentleman here about 5 rows back. I'm going to go to the wings as well in due course. Another gentleman over there on the right.
Thank you. Christoph Birkolz here from Impact Hub. I see a certain trend or fascination on entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial culture within large companies, almost like a silver bullet sometimes. And I would like to understand, do you agree on the necessity of an entrepreneurial culture within a large company, and to what extent? I mean, where does it stop? Where is it maybe not even good to be entrepreneurial within a large organization?
Right. I think everyone's going to agree on the entrepreneurial culture. I think the real question is, if I can refine it, how do you actually encourage that entrepreneurial culture? So maybe...
and where is it enough, maybe
yeah, where do you draw the line? Ulrich, do you want to go with that?
Well, it's always a very fine balance. First of all, we want to have a large association of entrepreneurs. But what we need to make sure is, how do you get there? On the one hand, our risk management shouldn't be so strong that we don't take any anymore, okay? Because that would be killing the company's future if we are not ready to take any balanced risk anymore in the future. On the other hand, our company nearly got killed by taking too many risks at the same time and going too far out and not assessing them in the appropriate way. So I think getting a culture where entrepreneurialism is requested and expected, putting in the appropriate risk management, and making sure when you have a large portfolio, you take only as much risk as you can swallow in the worst case if they all materialize, is one of the challenges that you really overcome, and that's one of the jobs that you have to do to run it in a good way. If you take the risk-taking attitude on the individual level, I think any startup entrepreneur that doesn't want to go broke, if he fails with his idea, he should join a company like Novartis, ABB, or Swatch, because you still get paid when you go broke with your idea, typically because we can afford to do this and keep you going with your great idea. So altogether, I think we need to make sure we harvest the risk management approach in the appropriate way. The second part is on the disruptive question that came before. How do we get entrepreneurs that bring disruptive ideas? They will really need to take the people sometimes out of the established system and have them still close to the system. And we have a simple rule then. When, for example, we did the startup in China, we told them they can have access to anything in ABB, but nobody can go and try to love them and help them. So when you have a small startup team, it can draw on the resources, it's allowed to do its job, nobody's allowed to influence them, what they're doing, unless it's on the safety and integrity side. And then you get some momentum going. A couple of thoughts here.
Yeah. Nick, on the entrepreneurial point, where do you stop it? I mean, obviously, you've talked a lot about how you encourage it. Is there a point where you have to say, look, enough, we don't need...
I mean, you can easily stop it. You put a finance boss at the head of a profit center. That's why in Swatch Group, we never give to a finance boss a responsibility for a profit center. But that's our approach, so I don't want to generalize, please, that nobody is now hurt by my remarks. Now, you see, I would not talk about the risks, I would talk about the opportunities. I mean, we need to identify opportunities first, before that we identify the risks. And when the opportunity seems to be bigger, then the risks, then let's go for it. Of course, without putting in danger, without playing casino, whatsoever. And then you can still fail. My father said once it should be written in the Swiss constitution, the right to fail. But we didn't achieve that. And,
right. You can always have a referendum.
We are not making a referendum on this. It will not work. Yeah. But you see, it's so important to identify opportunities and then go for it, even if it's the stomach, even if on new, innovative, future product, you cannot already have a profit and loss. You can have a projection and whatsoever. But, especially on emotional products, you need really to identify the opportunities, and then you go for it. And that's a certain point of time, of course. You have to say, okay, now, can we achieve it or can we not achieve it? But there's an example, goes a little bit in this direction about identifying opportunities or only thinking about minimizing risks. There are two gentlemen, they are selling shoes. And they have to fly to Africa, to Chad or wherever. And then they arrive both, and one looks around and says, oh my God, look, the people here, 90%, they don't wear shoes. So what do I do here? He calls his wife and says, look, I come back tomorrow. You can already start to cook my favorite food, and then I'm back. Because I cannot sell shoes here. There's only 10% of the people who have shoes. And the other one who arrived with him, he says, fantastic. 90% of the people have no shoes. Can you imagine how much shoes I can sell here? He called his wife and said, look, I come back in 6 months. Send me some shirts and a new Swatch watch, and then I stay here. So it goes about opportunities. And what we see today, unfortunately, in many, many companies, you have the compliance legal. It becomes so strong. So everything could be a risk. And if there is a potential risk, stop it before it gets a risk. That's a problem. And then comes the finance layer, who says, ooh, but we don't know. Is it profitable or not? And this is a problem. And, you know, entrepreneur spirit means simply that you see opportunities and you try to push them without having the guarantee that you succeed. But of course, if you think the risks are much higher than the opportunities, then you have to stop it and not go for it. This I would say to this.
Good points. So there was a question over here on the far right. Yeah, gentleman, and then the lady with the greying hair on the end of the same row.
Thanks. Actually, first of all, Mr. Hayek, we resonate with the 90% rule. In Asia, where we work for an innovation...
Sorry, who are you?
Sorry, name is Philip. I work for MetLife Future Lab, which is an insurance innovation center. Okay. So 90% of Asia doesn't have insurance. So we are looking particularly as at 90%, as the 10% rule. But most importantly, I want to draw the attention to the status quo, which I think we all still love, even though we think about innovation, okay? And I think the responsibility of large companies is to challenge and evolve the status quo. But also, large companies are, as anyone, stifled by regulation, because obviously, at least for three of us here on the panel, that's a big issue. We can't sort of innovate as disruptively because we always have to do certain regulations, that disallow us to do certain things. And the other part of the status quo is nostalgia. So in the case of Swatch, people like an automatic watch because it's old, and in a way, sort of Swatch has somehow changed that, but still there is an attachment to old things and things that have sort of traditional value and nostalgical value. So the question is, how do you manage and moderate in an ethical way the discourse with politics and regulators to be able to actually affect disruption as a large company and to be able to innovate and sort of progress the status quo to a better alternative?
Okay, could you pass the mic to the lady at the end of your row, just so that we can... Thank you. We'll just get a second question in here.
It's my turn.
Yes, please.
I'm Melanie Krüsel from the Handelszeitung, and I want to turn around the question you put at the beginning. Why should one come to your company? Now, why should one not come to your company? Which people would you not encourage to work for you?
Okay. All right, we'll come to that one. The first question, it's about regulation. Perhaps we start at the Novartis end, obviously regulated business. It's true that there are outside constraints. You can't break those. You can't go experimenting on people without having tested and so on.
No, and I mean, I think everybody's aware the pharmaceutical industry is a highly regulated industry, and it's getting worse. I mean, it's not only from a governmental perspective, but also compliance was a topic. I mean, there are many constraints that actually influence the way the pharmaceutical industry runs its business, and some of them are totally adequate and totally correct. Coming back to innovation, what we of course see is a certain reluctancy of organizations like the FDA to improve new innovative therapies without an adequate data set and adequate proof that this therapy really makes a difference to the health of people. On the other hand, we have also seen approaches that are really disruptive. Gene therapy approaches, for example, cell therapy approaches, where the FDA can be very flexible and is very much willing to allow access of the American population to a new treatment that is disruptive and changes the course of medicine completely. But they need to be convinced that that is a dramatic improvement versus the current state of treatment. So what we see is, yes, regulators can be very stringent when you come with incremental stuff, but they can be very generous if you come with breakthrough therapies that really change the way medicine is being done. So it's both ways. I mean, there is openness, but only for real dramatically different stuff.
Would you argue that because big companies like yours employ people to understand the regulation and so on, that actually it creates a sort of protection for innovation internally? Whereas if you were innovating with new drugs as a small company, you would have to have that infrastructure of regulation and compliance within the company. You're offering that to everyone who's innovating within Novartis.
I think that's coming back to the point I made earlier, the difference between an invention and an innovation. I mean, to turn an invention into an innovation takes a lot of additional thought.
Right.
And that is provided by people who understand the regulations. I mean, to get a product approved in Switzerland, in Europe, in the US, you need to comply with certain rules. And you need to know about those, because if not, well, you will not make it. It's very simple. So you need people who have the education and the background and the skills to actually guide you as a young innovator or inventor to come up during the course of the invention, which sometimes takes 10 years. Okay? During that course of activity, to collect the right information and collect the right data. So that is not trivial and needs an infrastructure and needs experience. I'm not saying it needs a large company, but it needs more than a 10-people garage company.
Right, right. I'm going to save up the second question there to be the last question for the panel, because it seems like a good one to end on. So I'll let everyone ponder who would you not encourage. We already know that Nick wouldn't encourage finance people. He's managed to deter them.
In suits.
In suits. But we'll come back to that.
You were talking about clients.
We'll,
I want everybody.
We'll come back to the question at the end. Yes, the lady halfway back on the middle right there. There's a good point while we're waiting for the mic to get there that Dave Packard of Hewlett-Packard, the co-founder, made about big companies, saying that big companies are more likely to die of indigestion than starvation. So go to the point about failure and spotting your failures early. You don't want to accumulate too much useless innovation. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Smriti Sriram, and I'm from the UK, and I've also submitted my postal vote today.
Excellent.
I've been very inspired, particularly by Mr. Hayek, and my question is about young people, because we're sitting at a symposium which is conducted by young people. And I studied philosophy at university, and I now run my father's company, and we push on the innovation side. But one thing that really got me when I was applying for the McKinseys of the world and the Goldman Sachses of the world was that you had to go through a very rigorous, standardized test. And I want to know, how do you encourage young people who are the sort of quirky thinkers to join organizations like yours? Because they will challenge you in how you develop a product or structure your processes. Because that is what is very important these days, to structure a way that young people can feel welcome in suits organizations or not. So that's my question to the panel.
What does your company do, just out of interest?
We manufacture sustainable packaging. And I also run a social enterprise award called the Wings of Hope, where I encourage 14 to 18-year-olds to raise money for charity in very innovative ways. And some of their projects fail, but we never assess them on how much money they raise, but the innovation the innovation behind their projects. So it's something that I'm very passionate about.
Right.
I hope others are too.
I'm sure. So thank you for the question. So Stephen, the young people, but also quirky people, and that's also interesting. One of the criticisms of big companies is they will sort of smooth out the interesting people, the eccentrics who might actually bring you the next breakthrough.
I think we can never have too much entrepreneurship, in a company. So it's a matter of how you channel it and how you use that energy. So, and by the way, we don't have standardized tests, long tests for our new recruits. So,
well, unless they're pilots, presumably.
We have our own cadets, and we train them through our own training school. But being a captain of an airline, you have to channel your innovative ideas in constructive ways again.
Yeah, good. And Nick, a quick point about the quirky and the eccentric within Swatch.
Now listen, in Swatch or in Swatch Group, if you apply for a job, despite you have a high school degree or an MBA, you could perhaps have a job. Despite. So it means that in our company, what is important is not your papers and your qualification, what is on the paper. We are never asking for these kind of things, except for some specialists, of course. But otherwise, it's really important. We are totally open-minded. And I will never meet somebody and looking at his curriculum vitae, what his school or his diplomas and whatever are. Perhaps my father never finished university. I must say this. With me happens the same. After 2 years, I said, oh my God, I was in St. Gallen. Never anymore. you see, this doesn't mean that if you have all kind of degrees, etc., if we have somebody who learned pragmatic something, who started at a machine, who made his experience in doing something, instead of only sitting and listening something and making theories, it gets the advantage. He has more chances to get the job than somebody who is coming with a lot of university degrees. And that's the spirit of the company. So again, we're looking at the person, what he did, but we're not interested in having his degrees.
So you partly answered the question about who you might discourage. Not that,
no, we don't discourage. No, we say, my father said always, if you send a camel to Cambridge, he still will be a camel when he gets out.
Right.
This.
Okay, nice point, nice point.
But this means, don't worry, we are not discouraging people who made degrees. We have many people, but you see, if you look at the management board of the Swatch Group, we have a lot of people that are in there. They started at mechanic apprenticeship, never did an MBA, and now they are part of the management board.
Right.
Because it's not important. Of course, we don't tell somebody, we will not hire you, you are fantastic, you are good, you would match the job, but because you have a degree, we don't take you. No. But when you come with the idea, oh, many degrees and MBAs will qualify me and make me better than the one who has just worked at a machine or as a mechanic, that's not the case in Swatch Group.
Ulrich, switching into the question that we left for the end, because we're nearing the end now, just in a sentence, who would you not encourage to come to ABB? Is there a type of person who comes through the door and you think, no way?
Look, we are a highly diverse group and we appreciate diversity and we want to have all kinds of different people. The only thing that we will never ever hire is an unethical person.
Right, good point. Stephen, who would you not encourage from your list of candidates? I'm assuming ethics, I'm taking it as read, that an unethical person would not.
All right. So I'll come from another angle. I think if you are too contented and you are too happy with status quo, that's probably not for us. Because if you are too happy, you may not make much progress.
Jörg?
We are passionate about our mission, which is to improve people's lives. And if you're not passionate in that context, don't join us.
Right. I think we're going to have to wind up. I see from the results that we're not only not convinced people that big companies are likely to come up with it, we've actually turned some people against the idea that big companies can innovate. So all in all, a successful panel. Please thank the panelists.